Psychic Focus at psychicfocus.blogspot.com, and today I wanted to do a reading, and I call it a look at 2019. At the end of the year and the beginning of a new year, I always like to do a reading, just touching base on different areas to see what things come through or what comes to me regarding what's going to happen in the upcoming year. So that is what I'm doing here. And just as a little tip, I realize this is going to be a pretty long reading. I have 5 major areas that I'm going to cover. And if you're like me and sometimes pressed for time, there's a setting on YouTube that you can switch the video to 1.5 times the speed. Just helps you get through it a little quicker. You may know that already, but if not, that's a nice tip. The other thing I always like to tell people, especially in a reading of this magnitude, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a financial advisor, so please do your research. Okay, so now that all that's out of the way, we can go ahead and get started. So the first area that I wanted to tackle for 2019, what do I see? I wanted to look at politics and government. And the first thing I got when I thought about this topic was I heard the phrase, the scandal of the century is about to unfold. And I got an image of people and they were sitting around the TV and they were so glued to the TV. They were trying to figure out what is going on. And it didn't feel just tied to the United States either. This was something big that was out there. And it feels more than just the 2020 election, which that in itself is going to be a big deal too. But it looked as though it was going to affect the leaders in several different countries out there. It was almost as if the swamp starts to really drain and things really start happening and people are in shock and awe at what all comes out. It is almost, and like I said, it's going to be the scandal of the century. So I'm excited to see what that looks like it's going to be about. And my impression was that the unsealed indictments are going to surface and the magnitude is going to shock everybody. And it's going to go way beyond certain foundations out there that I have to watch what I say because I'll end up getting flagged. But I think we all know what I'm talking about. I also saw there's going to be a big global divide with people. And more people are going to start to meet in the middle. It's like there's a shift and they're so burnt out of this political division that people start to wake up. Now, yes, you're always going to have radical people on one side or the other. But it feels as though there's becoming more harmony in the middle. And it looked like a lot of these groups were going to unite to fight the government. And I saw it really over in Europe. And they were fighting for rights. They were fighting to get Brexit pushed through. They're fighting to make the government work for the people versus themselves. They want to fight against the limit of the government control. So that felt positive, that people were starting to at least see that if they come together, maybe they can actually evoke some kind of a change. And 2019 starts the campaigning of the 2020 election, which we all know is going to be a pretty big deal. You don't have to be psychic to know that there's going to be a lot of energy tied to that. I did get that Trump's going to end up swapping out Pence for, it felt like, a female vice president. So that'll be interesting. I also see the Dems sculpting. 2 people came to my mind when I was focusing on this. So it looks like Kamala Harris, or Camilla Harris, I'm not sure exactly how you say her name, or Cory Booker is a top contender for the Democratic rep. And so when I saw them, it looked as though they were having secret conversations behind closed doors. So there's some kind of energy tied to them. So something is going on with Harris or Booker, maybe even both. Okay, so now let's switch gears here. I wanted to look at weather, natural and man-made events. And I'm going to go over several areas of the world because when I tuned into this, what I got was I saw a world map. And I honed in on it to see what I was drawn to and what images and what impressions I got as I was drawn to certain areas. The first thing that I saw was Australia. And I wanted to look at the northwest part, clear into the ocean. And I heard it rumble. I felt like there was an earthquake in the region. I do not see a tsunami, but I did get this unsettled feeling for the nearby land masses, as if maybe there's a warning out there, maybe they feel it, or maybe something happens. And I wanted to date it to around March or April when I saw that happening. I then heard the phrase, Taiwan is going to be wet. So this region looks like it gets a lot of rain. It wasn't necessarily a flooding rain, but nonetheless a lot of rain. The interesting thing I saw tied to it, it wasn't the rain that was a huge issue, but it looks as though the rain brought in some kind of an insect. I want to say mosquito. Maybe that was symbolic, but I want to say mosquitoes that carry some kind of disease. So then there's this fear and this panic out there, you know, all the mosquitoes are going to get you. Don't live in fear. I get the fears of what they want to say is worse than the reality of it, but it's something to be cautious of. I also got that there was some kind of a natural remedy against this mosquito disease that's out there, and I saw someone eating garlic. Again, could be symbolic, but I feel as though it's leading me down a path to say, hey, do your research. There's natural things out there. Do what's best for you, but just expect that there's going to be something like that type of an outbreak going on. Next thing I got, completely different here. I heard the word avalanche, and I was drawn to Europe. I didn't see a specific location in Europe. Felt more centralized of Europe. But I got more than anything, you know, heed the warnings that are out there, because it feels like, and I'll get into the weather even more in other areas, but the weather does this thing where it's unseasonably hot and then cold, and that fluctuation, that hot, cold, does something to the snow or the ice or the mountains, but it creates a situation that makes avalanches more, I guess, easy to happen, or creates the environment for that type of a thing to happen. So listen to the warnings and pay attention, and just use good common sense when it comes to that. I got that a lot of Russia is going to have a brutal winter, and I saw it especially in the northeastern quadrant. If you were to take Russia and make, you know, a grid there, it was the quadrant, the northeastern quadrant, that looks to get hit the worst. When I looked at Europe, I saw a lot of flooding, and flooding is going to be a huge problem there. I'm not sure if it has some impact on sewage, but when I was looking at it, I saw that it looked like water was having problems draining, and I saw and I smelled this stench of standing water, and it looks to be something significant enough that's going to require the help of other countries to come in. So something's going on with Europe. I got with the flooding. That's going to be a big deal. Now, South America, going on the other side of the world here, I immediately saw an intense sun, and the people look like they're hot and they're sweating. Summer looks to be hotter and drier, lack of rain, more, you know, again, kind of a drought situation, more than normal. And I heard the phrase heat advisory, which was a huge concern for people that didn't have air conditioning and people that were maybe had some health concerns or health conditions, and the heat made it worse. And oddly, it looked like the East Coast was more affected than the West. So in this situation, it's almost like the country was divided. So you're having more of it looked to happen all over the country. However, the east side seems to get hit much worse. All right, Venezuela. This one was interesting because I get there's going to be a man-made event in Venezuela. It's no secret, it's been in the news that Venezuela and their economy is really struggling. Well, I get that because of that, that sets up an opportunity for someone else. It looks like they create some kind of a man-made event where another country can go in and basically help save the day. And in the process of doing that, they're able to get a hold of some of the natural resources that Venezuela possesses. So I look for someone to create a problem, man-made problem, and then come in and be the solution. In the process, getting boots on the ground and getting access to some of the natural things that Venezuela possesses, but maybe doesn't have the economy to maximize it. So I see Venezuela kind of being a big deal with that. All right, so the United States, they have a lot going on. The winter looks rough, partly because of the harsh cold and the snow, but also because it fluctuates so much. I get we're going to see unseasonably warm and then hot, cold, warm and then cold snaps out of nowhere. And this fluctuation is really hard on people's immune systems. In the process of this hot and cold thing going on, people getting beat down, people getting sick, there's going to be this aha moment where Big Pharma can basically come in and say, oh, you need this immunization, you need that immunization. So I look for a huge push for immunizations. Maybe you even get free gas or they give you a coupon. You know, they're going to be doing things, almost making them free, wanting to get them out there, you know, do their testing that they do on all the immunizations that are out there. So look for your flu, shingles, and pneumonia vaccine, because I see that the push is going to be to really try to get that out there. Even regions you're going to see that have milder winters are going to experience more cold than normal. So it does feel like a lot of fluctuations there. California still feels dry. And there is something going on there. And the powers that were, which I refer to them a lot, they aren't sure what they're going to do with California yet. And I get there's some kind of plan, but no one can decide. It's almost like you have all these people sitting at a round table. People are throwing their ideas in, but nothing sticks. I get they get a little rain in the spring, but it's not what they need. And I do see some developing occurring there in some of the fire-ridden areas. And it's almost like what they do is the areas that have burnt down, they use that as a development opportunity. And they're not developing green space. They're making it into a money-making, you know, build buildings, build some kind of infrastructure. So I see that opportunity really taking off. Saw a lot of energy around Yellowstone. I do not see Yellowstone exploding. I do get, or erupting rather, I should say. I do get that there's some kind of off-gassing going on. I'm not sure if there's an odor. I get there is. That could be symbolic just to clue me in to know what is going on there. But the animals sense that something is really off and they don't like it. I'd watch out for a lot of odd animal behavior to continue in that area. All right. Now we're going to switch over and we're going to look at the economy. Precious metals, cryptos, and the stock market. Okay. Clear my throat here. So the beginning of 2019 looks to have a solid economy. Stocks look, and I see a graph stable with minor fluctuations that ride out in the end. And I do get after the 2019 campaign starts that big companies are going to have bought up a lot of stocks. So it's like we have these big players in the stock market that are gobbling up tons of stock. And because they have such, I guess, tremendous amounts of stock, they can manipulate some of the trends with the stock market by buying more, selling, and all of that kind of stuff. So what I get happens is after the 2019 campaign starts, you're going to see some of these big players that own tons of stock dumping their stock to manipulate the market, make it go down, crash the market a little to make Trump look bad, because once they start campaigning, they don't want the stock market to do great because that just makes Trump look better. So there's going to be some intentional manipulation in there, and I see that already starting out next year. Now the inverse looks to happen with precious metals. So I see them stable, but they're still suppressed. For example, I see silver fluctuating. I get between like $16, $20 an ounce with occasional pops, you know, above and below. But near October, that time frame, when the stock market becomes unpredictable from the things I just talked about, silver looks to slowly incline. It doesn't get true to value, but it rides around, I'm going to say $28 to $32 an ounce, maybe a little higher, partly because of what we discussed, but it's really largely in part to China influencing the internal trade to occur in gold. So I see China, and I'll talk about this as we get going here. They look like they start to passive aggressive the United States for all this tariff stuff and all the things that are going on, and they're trying to influence trade, especially in oil, to occur in gold or precious metals versus the dollar. When that happens, which I see it near the end of next year, it's going to put silver at a more, I guess, desirable thing to possess. So silver is going to increase in value. So I totally see that happening next year. Cryptos, they're still hot, but they're volatile. And I get a lot of new ones are going to emerge, and be cautious of scams because some are, and I got the word premature. I don't know if that's the correct term, but I heard they're premature going to market. Many retailers are going to open up to take cryptos, but only specific ones. And I got the name Bitcoin as payment, but there's some kind of transaction tax tied to the purchase. So some kind of, I guess, infrastructure is being set up where they can use cryptos to buy things, but there's going to be some element of taxation tied to it. That I see happening next year, them setting up that situation for that to be able to happen. All right. Now we're going to switch to international concerns here. So Russia, China, North Korea, and Europe, they're all going to be in the news. And I heard this phrase, and it says, sometimes even the strongest buildings have to crumble before a fortress can be built. And I feel that this is symbolic of a lot of the society expressing social unrest in pockets, and they're all over the world. I mean, you go over here and they're rioting for something. Somewhere over here they're picketing. This is going to continue to happen everywhere, and people are more determined than ever to evoke change, even with it starting small. So that's where it goes back to that phrase that sometimes the strongest buildings have to crumble before a fortress can be built. So yeah, they're ready to reinvent the wheel. At least that's what they're trying to do in order to get some semblance of regaining rights and regaining control. I get that the migrant situation is changing the whole landscape of Europe. The economy in Europe is going to struggle, and I feel like someone has to come in and save them. And I hear they're making deals with other countries. Europe especially struggles once Brexit finalizes. So once that occurs, then Europe is going to really see themselves economically in some turmoil, and they're going to need some outside interference. China feels the impacts of the tariffs that the U.S. is putting on them, and also the U.S. is going to start to secure their intellectual property even more so. And China's strong, and they have to reposition themselves, and they're pretty smart as well. And on the surface, they appear to agree with what's going on, but they're going to passively aggressively get back at the U.S. I saw a major unfolding eventually occurring, and the U.S. isn't going to like it. And like what I said earlier, China, to get back at the U.S., looks to try to influence other countries to start trading their oil and precious metals versus the dollar, which will completely upset the U.S. But the benefit is China has a lot of gold, so they're totally fine with that type of an agreement. So I look for something big to happen with that. Russia feels strong, their economy looks strong, and Putin stays strong. I see Russia being in the news, but nothing seems to really hurt or impact Putin. The Russian collusion that we all hear about all the time looks to still be a popular term, but nothing significant emerges from it. It's a huge thing that's consumed so much time, and nothing that really amounts to much of anything is going to happen with that. India looks to be one of the strongest emerging countries out there, and I see them being an economic player in 2019, and I hear the country is a silent grower in the economy. So sit back and keep your eyes on India here. All right, so I wanted to finish this with something positive, and so I wanted to do the spiritual awakening and disclosure. So when I thought about that and what's going on, what energetically is going to happen in 2019, I get that more and more people are going to awaken every day. We're going to continue to feel wave X surges, and they're going to be more frequent and more intense. People that are sensitive will not only feel the effects of the energy surges, but I heard that clairaudiently and clairvoyantly, a lot of people are going to start to wake up and experience these gifts as long as they're not scared of it. So if you open up and you welcome it, I get that a lot of clairaudience and clairvoyance is going to emerge within people, especially people that are sensitive to all these energies. I got that Kundalini energy looks like it increases as well, and this is a huge step in the ascension as we move our chakra energies around. So look for that to happen and see if maybe you even feel that within your own self. UFO events over Alaska, Greenland, and New Zealand are going to be on the rise. I saw those 3 areas really light up, and it looks like ETs are becoming even more brazen. They're just trying to show themselves, and they're just getting where they don't even care. These are going to be big events that the government tries to hide, but there's not going to be any story that makes any sense, and a lot of people are going to debunk it, and there's going to be a lot of photos out there and supporting evidence that they're around, that this is happening. Disclosure still feels like a challenge, but I got some subtle disclosure and even misspeaking in public, and I got there's going to be a lot of Freudian slips out there. Someone will say something, even maybe a politician, maybe someone in the media. There's going to be a lot of slips. So you know that it's out there, but yet they still try to cover it up. People still, they just need to seek out alternative news to get well-rounded information. You can't just stick with one source. And that was all I had for this reading. I want to thank everybody for their support, and I hope all of you have a happy and healthy 2019. And again, I'm Lynn with Psychic Focus at psychicfocus.blogspot.com. Feel free to leave a comment. Please like me. Please share me. All those things, they help me out so much, especially in this day and age of censorship and shadow banning and all that kind of stuff. It's hard to get the word out there. So any help that any of you give me is most appreciated, and I'm very grateful. So again, Happy New Year. Thank you to everyone, and that is it for today. Goodbye.